I choose business ethics.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to the podcast, episode 29, GK Tech Bros. Today, we're going to be talking about business ethics, and we've got a few companies that we're going to be rating. We've got Apple, Samsung, HP, Google, and Dell, and Microsoft. We're going to we have a few categories. I'm not going to go over each one granularly, but why don't you start us off, John, and tell us a little bit about Apple? And
Yeah. I'll start with first what we considered as far as the categories.
Okay.
We considered sustainability. We also considered environmental impact. We just call it their green initiatives. How they are when it comes to ownership versus subscription models. We rated them on planned obsolescence was a category that we considered, as well as company transparency. So we're going with Apple first. Okay. So a couple of things to highlight. I think overall, and this is automatically gonna bring some haters from the Android community. So I guess on like a 1 to 5 scale, I would give them probably an overall of a 4. And I have some reasons for that. The big reason why they get some props from me is under sustainability. And Brandon, feel free to jump in at any point here, but I want to give you an example of sustainability with Apple and Apple products. So, the current for their iPhones, the current OS is iOS 17. So we're in early 2024 right now. iOS 17 is the latest edition. So if you purchased an iPhone XR or an XS or an XS Max, which came out in 2018, you can and should be running with iOS 17. So that's the most current operating system. That's also security updates that are included in that. But I mean, it's 6 years later, and you can be running the latest that Apple has to offer. In comparison, Samsung released the S9 that year in 2018. The last OS update that the S9 got was Android 10, which came out in 2020. So they got basically one, because I think it came with Android 9 on it. Maybe it was 8, maybe 9. But basically, it got 2 years of OS supports plus another 2 years of security updates. Now, I know Samsung has made commitments now to
we'll go over that later,
offer. Yeah, we'll go over that because you're going to talk about Samsung. But this has been a trend that Apple has had ongoing for well beyond a decade at this point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's very easy to recommend Apple products for someone who's looking to get longevity out of a product, whether it's a computer from them or it's a phone, a tablet. Apple does a great job when it comes to build materials. They do a great job when it comes to support for the product. They don't do a good job when it comes to repair. Obviously, they want to control repair when it comes to the product itself. But when it comes to longevity, you can get an iPhone today, and it can be a 5 or 6 year phone for you. Now you're probably going to need a battery replacement at some point within the next 2.5 years, 3 years, like any other phone. But
at least they have in there in the phone. You've got a battery health report. That's nice. So you can kind of know.
That's another thing that you got. Yeah, and so and I know a lot of we don't have a lot of people who listen to us, so I'm sure that there's an Android person who's an Apple hater, and they're screaming, "What about BatteryGate?" And I understand that. And that'll come up a little bit later, BatteryGate. But even with BatteryGate, it still goes. The BatteryGate issue, I think, is maybe not a one-off issue, because it seems weird that that Apple, and this is part of the planned obsolescence conversation, which will happen later, but it seems weird that Apple would purposely try to sabotage its phones 2 years into their life cycle, but then support them on the software side for an additional 4 years beyond that. So, so I get it. Apple is expensive. It's one thing to love or hate iOS, and the the Apple ecosystem. I get it, but their products last a long time. And so, with that, we can talk about what they're doing on the green side. So they came out last. They're the big thing that they talked about for with the iPhone 15 launch was going carbon neutral, and basically being a net zero from their across the board with them, from manufacturing to the corporate headquarters to their stores. They want to be carbon neutral by 2030. That's probably the most aggressive plan that I've seen in the research that I did with the other companies that I did. To throw out, I believe Dell, they also have like a carbon neutral kind of plan, but their goal is to be neutral by 2050.
And Samsung,
which to me,
oh, sorry,
is Samsung the same thing? Or
it's 2050. Yeah, it's a multi-tiered, but you're right.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So I think Dell's plan was like 50% by 2030, and then totally by 2050. Certainly, Apple was is the one with the most aggressive plan there. Where Apple really doesn't look good. Of course, BatteryGate, and one of the categories that it had was transparency. So the BatteryGate. So what is BatteryGate? BatteryGate was, I believe, the iPhone 6 or the 6S series. So Apple has it in their operating system that when the battery capacity is down to below 80%, it slows down the phone. Now, this led to a class action lawsuit against Apple. And because Apple didn't tell anybody about this certainly makes it look like planned obsolescence, at least on the surface anyway. That they're purposely slowing down their phones so you'd want to go out and buy another phone. And the typical lifespan of a battery is 2 to 3 years. The typical contract with your carrier is 2 years. It certainly is an egg on Apple's face, at least it was at the time. And so I get that, and a lot of people are pretty upset about that, and I understand. Now they claim that the reason for that is they slow down the phone so it consumes less energy, which would extend your battery's life, which makes sense. But this is, again, not something that they were forthcoming with, which, again, led to the class action lawsuit. So Apple... the other thing that I don't like about Apple is when they do their keynotes and they throw up all these graphs. They're just like, oh, we're 30% better than this, and they constantly throw out extremely vague information, and they don't do a good job at citing their sources and how they did certain testing to come up with these graphs. They're just like, hey, we have 20% better graphics versus last year's model or the year before's model, or they don't even say what they're comparing against. They'll just be like, we see a 30% increase. and so in their marketing everywhere, their presentations everywhere, they say great things in their marketing, but they don't actually go into what the testing looked like, what they were testing against often, and they really hinge their marketing on very vague language. So that's where I would ding them. But at the end of the day, when it comes to just grading the products, their products, even though yes they're expensive, and even though Apple does not offer like entry level, tiered, products at all, it's a very premium brand that relies on being trendy. But they make quality products that last a lot longer typically than their competition, and that's in just about everything that they offer products in, whether it's phones or tablets, computers, to streaming devices. I don't know. Are you agreeing with that? Disagreeing with that? Because you're not an Apple guy.
Yes.
I'm the Apple guy. You're not the Apple guy. So
I would, yeah. You're not biased or anything.
I see.
For all this.
I see that. I see that. Yeah. Well, I see that you've lost hair over this.
Yeah.
So,
well, the hair's been gone. It's nothing new. But yeah, I don't have a rebuttal or anything. It's very clear what device you use.
So full transparency. I own two phones.
That's true.
So I have a Samsung S23 Plus. I also have an iPhone 13 Pro Max. I'm recording this on my MacBook Air. And right next to me is my iPad. But here's what I'll also tell you is that my MacBook Air is 4 years old. My iPhone will be 3 years old. My iPad is 4 years old. And I don't intend on trading them in for anything else.
Yeah.
So again, if we're talking about longevity, the average person replaces their computer every 24 months. And here I am with a 4-year-old MacBook Air that works just as good today as it did 4 years ago. So
I think once you get into like planned obsolescence, we'll probably have more in common on talking points over Apple. As far as everything you've said, I'll have to take your word for it. I can't really speak to Apple. You being someone that knows a little more about it, so.
Mm-hmm. So that's basically everything that I have on Apple. I mean, the planned obsolescence again is the battery gate issue.
Oh, okay.
With them, yeah, that was my big thing that I hammered on them.
Yep. I guess we can, after we get through all the companies, we can do a little bit of review. But I would have to say real quick that if you're not commenting on it, the overall kind of, let's see, what's the word? The regression that I see with Apple is a little bit alarming. In that, yeah, they've had a history of sustainability, durability, great products. And there's the memes, of course, of corporate greed with Apple. And I saw one recently. Mm-hmm. It was like, oh, here's our past plans to make more and more money. Now you got to buy the dongle, and you have to buy this, and you have to buy this now. Always wanting more money. And then the most recent idea that one of them had was, okay, let's make all the products just stop working, so you got to go buy a new iPhone. We're not going to make anything new in the new iPhone, so we have to find a way. I don't know. And like I said, I don't have an opinion. I've never owned an Apple phone, so
yeah. So
might be some people out there feeling that way.
So when it came to planned obsolescence, I gave them a pretty good score because of the longevity of their products. But when I was thinking about another category, which is the ownership,
right,
versus how they view owning the device and whatnot, and whether or not that was a really low score for me.
Yeah. And we probably should be
incredible.
I don't know that there's a company on this list. If we were rating if we were rating solely on ownership versus subscription, we could probably we could probably make a podcast just about hammering each company on that point.
We could, and it would be several parts and last several hours probably.
So that's the scary thing. Go ahead. Finish what you're saying.
So on the planned obsolescence, I give him a really good score. I give him a 4 out of 5. But on the ownership side, it was a 2.
Yeah, and that's partly the repair, right?
So that's a lot to do with repair. So the notes that I have. You should so you should be able to own your. So if Apple says we will sell you a device for $1,300 and you pay $1,300, you should own that device.
Right.
But Apple has notoriously been, up until recently at least, against right to repair. Mac OS and iOS have been notoriously locked down to prevent any kind of modification. And if you want to live in their ecosystem, you have to live by their rules. Yeah. And so they want to control everything, even after they got their money. And so, and this is part of like the walled garden thing is, it's if you're willing to pay the money, you can be in there and you can be happy within the Apple ecosystem. But you have to live by their rules. And yeah, when they decide to switch over from to USB-C only on their MacBooks and whatnot, that sucks that you have to buy a dongle and whatnot. But yeah, their overall view on who actually owns the products that they sell, which should be a very black and white area. Apple sees this, they still own you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you never own, and I'm guilty of it, right? I live within the Apple ecosystem and still feel like they own me and I don't own my products, which is unfortunate.
Yes. Yeah, we'll leave it at that because, like I said, we could go on a big rabbit hole.
We could rant on just that for hours.
So, I suppose we'll just go. Since it's kind of a good transition there into Samsung. We talked about Apple with their overall score and their sustainability, and you talked about is it 6 years you said or something? They've historically
currently, it's basically 6 years. If you purchase an iPhone XS, you're getting 6 years worth.
And they've been doing that
security updates and iOS updates.
Been great about Apple's.
That's been a trend with them for a long time. Yeah,
and I don't see that going away, which is nice. Now, I actually have a chart somewhere, but Samsung has recently promised, which I think you were about to get into, 7 years of updates.
Security updates, right? I think.
Well, see, I have it right here. I think it's OS and security updates, but you might be right. Maybe it's security updates. Let me see. But yeah, so that's a cool new thing. No, they haven't done this. They have made a progression though, from the 2 years you mentioned with a really old device, and slowly they've been putting more and more updates into their devices and committing to more longevity with their Android devices. And so that's a really cool trend to see. I don't know if there's been a device that we've seen 6 years of support in as to date, but
so I have not seen that with any phone maker outside of Apple. Certainly no Android. The only company that I've seen that supports a product for that kind of longevity is Microsoft and Windows.
So this is going to leak into Google, but I found the chart. This is from CNET.com. The S24, 7 years of major software updates and 7 years of security updates. So that's That's pretty cool. Google as well, which we'll get to later. 7 years of both major software updates and security updates on their newest Pixel
That's
8.
for their Pixel line.
Yeah, their
I'm
newest
assuming.
Pixel 8. I don't know if it includes any other device, but the newest Galaxy phone and Pixel phones. OnePlus, it looks like is 4 and 5, and Motorola
Hmm.
3 and 4 for their major. I think it's even less for some of the older devices on Razer or the cheaper
Hmm.
junk phones. So that gives you. And I know we're not touching on those companies, the Motorola and OnePlus in this podcast, but but yeah, that's a big promise. If we've seen that trend, so I'd like to give them a 4 as well for sustainability. It's easy to want to. I think if you were grading here too, you might give them a little lower score just because in the past, and in my line of
So
work. Go ahead.
I would give them a lower score because because it's nice that they've promised that, but we
Right.
need to see them pull through with it, right? Like Apple has the
Right.
history of doing that.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna rate them today, racing history, I think it'd be easy to give them that score. I mean, I know promises are promises, but they've been showing that trend. So I
Well, yeah. It's
if
so based off of if we said, hey, if we said if the future goes as the way it's supposed to go, then yeah,
right,
they should get the same 4 that I gave
yeah,
Apple.
yeah.
Um,
Um,
but maybe if we're still doing this podcast in 6 years,
yeah,
we can regrade them.
we
Yeah.
can see if they. Um, but yeah, so that's it's good to see. I lost my train of thought here, but just, well, I'll go ahead and move
So
into. Go ahead.
you want to move into talking green with them? Does
Yeah,
Samsung have a green initiative?
there was a couple of other points I had to make about sustainability, but we'll move into green for time's sake. We got a lot to go through here. Uh, they
Hmm.
do have a. I'm not going to go extensively through it, um, but they have a commitment as well. We touched earlier. 2050 is the end goal for total net zero across company. They do say in addition to it, let's see, it's a multi-tiered plan, so there's more to it than just the net zero. There's also aims to be 100% renewable energy by 2050 as well, net zero emissions, and there's in 2030 there's a lot the tiers. There's a lot of things they want to be net zero, like their device experience division. So it's kind of tiered. Anyways, I'm not going to break it down aggressively here,
Hmm.
but they've got a plan as well, not quite as aggressive it sounds like as Apple's plan. Um,
But probably more aggressive than HP and Dell, I'd imagine.
well, I guess you're going to tell us in a little bit here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think I do want to get into Google eventually, but maybe we'll let you get to HP, and we'll circle back to Google and Samsung. So you're going to tell us about Dell or HP now?
I'll talk about HP. So they're the company that scored the worst for me. I'd score them a 2 overall. Oh, HP, Hewlett Packard. So Hewlett Packard, they offer. Let me go into my notes because I took quite a bit, and I'll try to summarize it. So Hewlett Packard offers all sorts of technology products, printers. I will talk about quite a bit, but they also offer computers, and they offer everything in any kind of tier. So if you want gaming, they have the Omen line, which can be pretty expensive. They also have like their lower end tier stuff, and um, my professional experience with them has been, and this is over 10 years worth of working repairing PCs professionally. The majority of the computers that I fixed were Hewlett Packards. A lot of that has to do with the fact that they just use cheap parts. So, uh, way cheaper than anything that Apple would use, anything cheaper than what Samsung would use. The Samsung Galaxy line of laptops is an excellent line.
They're
You
expensive,
know,
but they
Dell
are
off
nice.
they well yes well I mean the Omens are expensive.
Yeah.
The Dell XPS line is expensive. But they're all, but Samsung's Galaxy, Dell XPS are way better made in my opinion
Sure.
than whatever HP puts out.
Which I probably should have
Um,
gotten into more about Samsung. Sorry to take your spotlight here. We both would agree
it's okay.
from doing work repairs on Samsung devices, really, really well made devices hardware wise as well. If you're talking about
Yeah,
sustainability, just across the
yeah,
board with
yeah.
phones and
So the interesting thing about Samsung and what's kind of surprised me when I was looking to compare like the S9 to the iPhone XS was or 10s was that the S9 only got 2 years worth of OS updates, but the S9 was a well built phone. And I
right,
felt like it should have been supported longer than it actually was on the software side from
yeah,
Samsung. Because Samsung up until 2020 2021, um, and then perhaps has rebound since the 23 line. Um, Samsung makes incredibly well built products. It, especially compared to other Android devices out there. Samsung really their build quality is top notch.
yeah.
HP's build quality is not. I mean, I don't know anybody that used to work with us. I know you were almost exclusively phone repair at our former
Oh, I know
job.
about the HP
Uh,
hinges. I'm aware.
exactly what I was going to mention. You're just like, look, the notorious HP hinges.
Yeah. It wasn't me
Yeah,
working on
it's
them; it was me hearing my techs talk about it. So
yeah. So yeah, HP hinges were a constant. The other thing that I really don't like about HP was that their warranty was is she it's sketchy. Not much support when it came to their warranty process. It's there to their credit, um, but uh, the process was not a great process with them. But so HP, I don't like how well built their their devices are, but I do want to get into printers with them. So um, HP and uh, in their ink thing. So you want to talk about planned obsolescence and you want to talk about ownership, right? So HP, if you choose to purchase an HP printer, and you decide that you want to sign up for their Instant Ink program, which is a subscription based program, and so you sign up, and it's a monthly charge. It's $4.99 or $7.99, depends on how much printing you're doing per month. Um, and you put it on your debit card to be debited to that amount, whatever. But then your debit card expires, and so your instant ink thing runs out, and you're like, "Oh crap, my printer isn't working. I don't have ink. Oh, I didn't pay my instant ink thing. Well, I better go to the store and get myself some ink." And then you get your HP genuine ink, and you put it in your printer. Your printer won't work because you went lapse. Because HP just decided that your printer's just not good. The printer that you purchased, Instant Ink doesn't come with the printer. You have to buy the printer and then sign up for Instant Ink. But HP will just shut down your printer. Um, and they have faced lawsuits before Instant Ink regarding their ink cartridges. So in 2010, they had a class action lawsuit against them because they're putting chips in their ink cartridges that would tell the printer when you're out of ink, except that it was shown that these chips were falsifying that information. So you weren't actually out of ink. You may have been close to out of ink, but you weren't actually out of ink. But when it read that you were out of ink, the printer would just shut down.
Yeah,
So
that's
not
worse
only
than
could you not
Batterygate.
print, that's way worse than Batterygate. Not only can you not print, even though you have ink in the cartridge, you can't scan documents because the printer just shuts down at that point.
Yeah, I would like to put them
Right.
more in charge of other,
So
devices in my household, please.
right. So if I could grade them on whether or not they respect ownership or not, I would grade them a 1. But we're not done there. Let's talk about planned obsolescence. So I encourage you, Brandon, or anyone else, go to your local electronic store that has printers in it or that sells HP ink, genuine cartridges. Uh, Walk down that aisle and tell me how many different kinds of HP ink there are. How many different types of cartridges? Because every couple years they change out their style. So it is how they run their printing is absolutely it's insane.
It's terrible.
HP is truly scummy when it comes to their printing business, and they want to control it so bad because ink is it's a residual income for them, right? They can sell you the printer at below cost because they know that you have to come back to them to get ink because they can put chips in their cartridges to prevent you from using third party ink.
Talk about planned obsolescence.
Right. So and they'll change ink cartridges every couple of years to make your printer become obsolete so you can buy another printer. And the cost of printer ink, you want to talk about liquid gold, that is so expensive. Like gas is way cheaper than printer ink is. It's absolutely insane. You can go to your local Staples and you can buy $100 printer, and then be shocked when you realize that every time that you need to get yourself a new set of ink cartridges, it's going to cost you another $100. So it's it's crazy.
So what's the rating you gave him?
I think I give them an overall 2.
Alright.
Maybe it should be a 1. I've harped on it. Like I'm getting mad. I'm getting mad. I'm happy that I'm talking about HP now because when I talk about Dell, it's going to be quicker but also nicer. But yeah, but HP doesn't come out and tell you that they're going to stop your printer from working, right? They're not transparent about that. They've been sued about it. Class action lawsuit galore when it comes to how they run their printing business. Yeah, overall, Hewlett Packard, I'm calling you out. You need to be better. Treat your customers better, because they're still a massive company. They own a big share of the printing market and the computer market. Treat your customers better. Be more transparent, and stop it with this scumminess. It's gross. Yeah. But you wanted to go back to Samsung a bit.
Both Samsung, Google. I'll start with Google, and then I'll probably rotate back to Samsung some more.
Okay.
Since we got to get through all these companies. For Google, I'm a pretty big fan of, as crazy as it might sound, of Google and their mostly because of their software. Now, any big company, if you've heard us on this podcast before, we're a little bit suspect of big companies because of some of their planned obsolescence and some of their scummy practices. I think that as a company gets really big, they tend to do more and more of these things. Um, they also tend to be a little more sluggish and performing and kind of being able to listen to audiences and what people want for their companies. It gets more difficult as they get more big. So I think that in the future, I a little worried about Google, and I don't know if we can get into all the details, but I'm going to give them a 3.5 overall.
Okay.
I'm going to skip sustainability real quick and go to green. So we talked about that with other companies. They do have a plan. I kind of wonder though about it. You didn't give me a ton of details about Apple's, but they do have a plan for 2030 for net zero. I don't see a ton of detail like I did for like Samsung. I saw a huge multi-tiered, plan. Apple, you kind of get into some details. They say that by 2030 they plan to be net zero emissions and carbon free energy. So I don't see a tier after that, so I'm not sure how they plan to. We won't get into details about it all, but that's still pretty ambitious. But right afterwards, they say we aim to reduce 50% of our combined scope. I don't know. These are all very lofty goals for all these companies. It'd be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, they have a plan for sustainability going back. I can't give them this huge. This is probably somewhere they don't do it well because, as we've talked about before on this podcast, for hardware wise, it's been a nightmare doing repairs on Pixel phones. There's been several generations of phones that have just completely failed, like every 4XL, most of the 5As, and so because of the hardware problems that they've suffered, I can't. That's kind of what's dragged this overall down a little bit. But it's a kind of a two-part story because for sustainability, here we have them at the top for 7 years of software and security updates, and we could talk at length about some of the awesome things Google has done in the software front. I'm super impressed with so much of what they do on the software front. I'm a big fan. I'm an Android user. I use almost all Google software. So it's kind of a story of Jekyll and Hyde there for sustainability.
Right, and you and I absolutely love that it's open source.
Right. Yeah.
Their software. Yeah.
Yep. So yeah, Google, please just either build some better hardware or just outsource all of that and get out of the way. Use Qualcomm or something for your processors. Get some better engineers. I don't know. But for transparency, when I was researching this is something we could go at length about. I'm, like I said before, leery of any, put my tinfoil hat, leery of any big company in regards to this. I don't want to go into details. I don't know if anyone's followed some of the Senate hearings on some of these different companies, social media and all that. Maybe we'll have to do another podcast on that. But one really interesting thing, you can go to adstransparency.google.com. You can check it out now if you want. It's pretty cool. They go into transparencyreport.google.com. Must have two little links here. Transparencyreport.google.com. You can go to this website and you can see security and privacy, content removal. That includes content delistings due to copyright, government requests to remove content, and they go into a lot of the different policies on this. And it's really well laid out, I feel like. They have some additional reports, including political advertising on traffic and disruptions to Google, requests to delist content under European privacy law. So a lot of really cool uh, applicable, relevant points that I would want to read about. And I just discovered this today, but so props to Google for transparency. Just even having this all up for us to look at. I want to see every company have a page like this. Even if it's not true, just talking about their own company and what they're doing. I mean, I know that I know that we have like, you're trying to go buy a phone or something, or do anything today. You get like these long, giant, user agreements and things. But at that point, fuck, I just want to get through what I'm trying to do so I can buy a device or whatever it is. No one reads, the full user agreements at that point because it's not what you're trying to do at the moment, when you're trying to buy a game or whatever it is, But but having a web page that you can go to like this is pretty cool. So props to Google for that. I think I got through all Google there. Do you have any comments on Google through all that?
I don't like how much information that they have on everybody.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm really trying. I try hard every podcast and not hold on my tinfoil hat the whole time because it's really easy for me to do.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's scary, that's for sure. And we could go into that. Great. It's another one of those topics we could probably talk a lot about. AI and
Probably.
I worry less about Google than I do about like a company that's not in here, which is Meta, Facebook. More leery of what they're doing with data, but
yeah. No, I think all of your points with Google's is they're all valid. My biggest criticism with them is the fact that for whatever reason they just don't believe in their own hardware and making good hardware.
Yeah, I think they probably rate higher than Samsung. I don't know exactly where, but if it wasn't for that hardware, that might even bring them down even lower. But it'd be fair for you to.
If the Apple killer would be the Pixel S24 Ultra.
What?
Was it the Apple killer? The true Apple killer would be the Pixel S24 Ultra, man. If you could take
gotcha.
that pure Android
saying.
operating system.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. And put that into Samsung's flagship, you would have the best phone.
Yeah, that would be nice.
So.
One little comment going back to Samsung. I had said I would rotate back. Just a kind of a personal story. I get people talking in my line of work about Samsung and about how, I hate Samsung. I had one Android, and then I ask them how long ago that was. It was usually it's a long time ago, right? And I think that's the story I'm hearing is some device a long time ago. It might have been a great phone when they owned it for a year or two, and I think that's what was happening is that they were not supporting their devices long enough at that time, and so what was a nice phone could sometimes. Now, some people say that some of these devices they're still rocking, which is kind of crazy, S9 or whatever. But without that support, there's some things that can happen for sure, some security problems or whatnot.
Yeah, that's the big thing. It's less to do with the OS update and more to do with security updates. Right. But yeah, it's you hate to see really well made phones like the S8 and the S9 not get the software support that they probably deserved. But hopefully, like I said, I have a S23. I'd like it to last longer than 2 years.
2030.
Well, 2030 for 2030 is a long time from now.
That's
but yeah, I would the S9, the latest One UI that the 9 got was 2.5, and here we are at like 6.1 now, I think. So, yeah, I would love for my S23 to be able to get the next, I think it's running Android, 14, I think is where we're
Mhm.
at now. Yeah, if it could get to Android 17, 18, that would be great. Um, but we'll see. We'll see when, if and when we get there.
So we're making our way through. We've got Dell and Microsoft.
Yeah, I'll talk Dell before we end. It'll be interesting to talk about Microsoft, but Dell is refreshingly vanilla. um, so like I think my overall with them was a 3, maybe a 3.5. Um, so when it comes to like sustainability, so Dell has similar offerings that HP has, right? So they offer, their $400 laptops. They also offer premium level laptops. They own Alienware. So if you want to spend, $3,000 or $4,000 on a computer with them, you can. Dell, of course, is you go to your website and you can customize your computer and have it custom built to your specific needs, which is awesome. Their XPS line is a pretty good lineup. When it comes to their build quality, I would say that it's leaps and bounds better than like an HP.
Yeah.
They're not as good as like a Samsung, um, but but again, I used to sell computers and I used to repair computers, and so I remember back maybe 8 years ago, um, you know, to help with their build quality and to make their laptops last a little bit longer and feel a little bit better. They were making little tiny tweaks to make it feel better. And one of the tweaks that they did that stuck out to me at the time was regarding their keyboard in their laptops. So what they did was this, they actually reinforced the keyboard with a piece of metal underneath it, and so you wouldn't get what's called keyboard flex. And so when you're like typing on a Toshiba or if you're typing on a HP, like the center of the keyboard would flex downward, and that could eventually lead to keys breaking, but it's just a very cheap kind of feeling. But your Dell laptops, even the cheaper ones, felt a lot nicer to type on.
Hmm.
Um, so, um, you know, at the same time, however, while most of the computers that I have fixed have been HPs, probably the second most have been Dells. So, um, like on sustainability on a 1 to 5, I gave them like a 3 because I think they're vanilla. Um, their products aren't terrible. I would hesitate to call them good. Certainly, I wouldn't call them great. Um, when it comes to are they a green company? Well, they have like Samsung. They have kind of a tiered approach. So they have 3 different tiers. By their third tier, their third goal is to be to have net zero greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and they want to reduce their current by 50% by 2030. Um, they also have a goal to source 75% of their electricity from renewable sources. Um, so they have a green plan, not as aggressive as an Apple, but not out of line from a lot of the other companies that also have green initiatives. One thing I do want to talk about with them, there's 2 things. The first one is we talked about ownership. So I tried to find if they offered any kind of subscription service. The only thing that I could find of any substance was their Dell Digital Locker, which is like a software thing that they have. But apart from that, they don't have anything else. And so they they do kind of think that when you buy a Dell that you own it, which is really refreshing. Now, the second thing that I want to talk about with them is we're going to kind of in the planned obsolescence. Let's talk about how they view their what they've done recently with their computers to make them more repairable, and whether or not they actually have a stance when it comes to right to repair. So they've actually taken measures to make their computers and products more repairable. So they have reduced the amount of screws that are in their laptops. They've also eliminated adhesives, or at least significantly reduced the amount of adhesive to make their devices more repairable, which you would think on the right to repair side is great. And for technicians, that's great. For anyone who wants to work on to be able to fix or to upgrade their own Dell laptop, that's great. But if you if you went to a Dell panel and talked to like their legal team, and you said, "Hey, what are you doing to make your computers more repairable? Because right to repair has become a thing. We're seeing more legislation around it. What are you doing to make your things more repairable and easier to repair and faster to repair?" They would highlight these things. They'd be like, "Well, we've actually have invested time to rethink." Repair and ease of repair. We've reduced the amount of screws, and we've reduced the amount of adhesive and made things more modular. And you're like, "Oh, that's great. You must be pro right to repair." And their stance would be like, "Whoa, we didn't say that. We didn't say we're pro right to repair. We just said that it's easier to repair our laptops." So their stance on things like right to repair is they don't have a stance on it. It's they back away when it comes to that conversation. So, I was looking on one website that gave them a B plus on the repairability scorecard, and it's their devices are easier to repair, but again, they don't have they don't necessarily want you fixing your own thing. They're just making it easier to fix.
Interesting.
So, yeah. So.
Did you finish them up?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, before I go into Microsoft, something I think is interesting, by the way, kudos to Dell being like the only company that has anything positive under the planned obsolescence. The right to repair kind of.
Well, so it was really refreshing, because I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago, Lenovo came out and said that they don't want people buying used computers.
Oh, jeez, make me throw up.
Yeah, they were like, "No, you don't want to buy refurbished or used computers, right? Because they're a danger."
Oh my goodness! I saw totally off the cuff here. I saw a guy. I watch a lot of different little podcasts and things. One guy was talking about how he rebuilt a really old bunch of old machines and made a new OS for them. It was really cool. I don't know. You might know more than I do. I wanted to bring it up to our buddy Josh, because that's pretty cool. He's I don't know what you could do with these machines, but I like that idea. let's he says, and his thing was, he was claiming that machines are not, they're not obsolete. They're not bad. Obviously, there's data size problems there with the things we do. But for what they were doing then, these machines have not degraded necessarily. There's still things you can do with some of these. I like to watch a lot of things like that with reusing old devices. But that was kind of cool. And I really wish that we could see some of these companies giving us some more excitement in that area. And that was what I was going to say is, I'm surprised we rated these companies so high and focused on, we're talking about green initiatives and sustainability, which are important things, sustainability, green initiatives. But I think if we were to be more honest about our weighting, we tend to weight more on the back end that we didn't talk about, the ownership, the planned obsolescence. If we were to weight those categories more heavily, I think we'd probably shoot these companies down a little more. which is interesting.
So the interesting thing about Dell, like now that I think about it, I might actually rate them higher overall
Right?
because of their back end
Yeah.
stuff. Yeah, not because I think they make good products, but because I like their stance, or at maybe lack of stance,
Better
even
than what I could
for
say about the
one
rest of
thing.
them. Yeah.
It's right. And the last thing I want to talk about Dell was on
All right.
transparency. I tried to find, like lawsuits and stuff to harp on them for being not transparent. And I didn't find much. They're currently facing litigation and a potential class action lawsuit over an Alienware laptop. They advertised that the core components were fully upgradable. Maybe they're
Mhm.
not.
Mhm.
But outside of that, there's very little. When they've had data breaches, they've been
Mhm.
upfront about it. You go through any of these other companies when it comes to transparency. Apple, Samsung, certainly HP, probably Microsoft. You'll find all sorts of things where they are getting in trouble for probably in some cases decades for not disclosing certain information.
Mhm.
Um, so uh, Dell hasn't been like that. Like I said, largely they're kind of a vanilla company, but after doing this kind of project, I'm a bigger fan of Dell today than I was, a few days ago before I started researching them more.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, you're right. If we took out sustainability and green initiatives, yeah, their scores would drop for just about everyone outside of maybe Google and Dell, probably.
Yeah. Um, I think we should do another podcast on that at some point, focused on like we talked about it, is focused on planned obsolete. I mean, it's something we've done, but maybe just rate companies just
Mm-hmm.
on that. But with that said, I'd hate to end on a downer. I could. I don't think I'm going to go into all the things that I have notes for Microsoft because it's depressing me looking through my notes. But you know, uh,
Well, I mean, I'll say some good things about Microsoft when you're done, just so we don't
no,
end
I
on
don't
a
even want
downer.
to. You can if you want to, sure. But I was gonna. So I give them like I was gonna give them just like a one, but maybe a 1.5 or two. I do like the Xbox. I've owned all the Xbox devices until the newest. I
Mm.
think you own an Xbox Series X, right? Maybe not.
Yes, I,
So,
I own a Series
yeah,
X. I've owned at one point
yeah.
uh
So we
every current model year. Like
right.
I've never owned a Series X, but I've owned
Okay.
the original Xbox for like a week. I owned the 360, and I still have a 360. In fact, I'm on my third 360. Thanks, Red Ring of
Yeah,
Death.
so that's what I was gonna say. I was about
uh,
to give them high, have that pull up their rating, but then I'm like, oh wait a minute, red rings of death. I don't know. And
mhm,
then we have a lot of these
right,
devices we
yeah.
have to buy. I don't think I can give them a high rating even than that. I do like their hardware to some degree. I absolutely hate the software. It would be up there with the reverse of Google. If you want to make the worst device ever, you get Microsoft software and Google hardware, and let's make a baby and it's spawn of Satan. Like, so like, and
So what you're saying put Windows
yeah,
on a Chromebook
was,
and
yeah,
you'll have the worst
that's
device
probably a bad
created.
idea, right? Oh man,
Yeah.
yeah, have a Microsoft design operating system for the Pixel line. Sounds terrible.
Mm,
So I don't know. I could talk at length, both personal experience. I would love to talk about, would not love to talk about, and I have a ton of notes here. One thing that I'll quickly point out is, so I want to kind of touch on the rumors about Xbox. Maybe some of you have heard rumors about this. So maybe they're going to shut down the Xbox console, and there's a lot of data that seems to kind of support something like this. I can't see them going away completely, but the narrative that Microsoft has been wanting to see has been they want the Xbox to become more of a home entertainment hub, and they've been wanting this for a while.
So they said
Right.
verbatim that their goal is to make every screen in your household an Xbox.
Yeah. So they've been wanting. I think that they're not as successful as they hoped to be. But this is kind of the narrative that they've been pushing, and so it makes sense that we're seeing some of these things happen with some of these things being Xboxes recently pushing some of their exclusive titles to PS5. That's been a rumor. More and more of those titles are going to go non-exclusive to Xbox. It seems like and then Microsoft in January laid off almost 2,000 employees in the gaming division. That's another. There's so many of these interesting things that are going on that kind of really look like they're reshifting, but really not shouldn't be a surprise. It's within their narrative. They're changing what they they want you in this subscription model. They want to sell these Game Pass and whatever Ultimate and these different things, and they want to be less of a gaming device and more of a home entertainment hub. So.
Yeah, it certainly seems like they want to get out of hardware again.
Yeah, I think they'll still have a hardware device. It seems like they're going to have to lower it. It seems like if they're going to be maybe not. I can't see someone buying a $500 device as their. But if they make a cool enough product, maybe in the future, like if I'm looking at buy a Fire Stick or a Chromecast or a Xbox console, I don't think I'm going to buy the console for a entertainment hub. I'm going to use some old console, which is what I will do a lot of the times. I'm not going to buy a brand new console unless they're really offering something else. But we'll see what they come up with. But yeah, I've got
yeah. Well, I think the writing's on the wall. Yep. They've come out recently saying that they're not going to get out of making consoles, but I think 10 years from now, you're not going to be able to buy an Xbox.
Yeah, or it's going to be called something completely different. I think it'll be, it won't be competing with PlayStation as much as a smart TV or something, or I don't know, be competing with some Roku or I don't know. So yeah, I again give them the lowest score, like a 1.5 or something, and I have a lot of personal, I could go into great length telling how many freaking times I bought Minecraft. I think I've maybe mentioned that on this podcast before. I think I've bought it like 20 times between my kids and me, and I've had times where I bought the game and for a Windows device, and that version of Minecraft just disappears, and I've been on the phone with multiple tiers of India customer support and got nothing for it. It just absolutely cannot stand Microsoft and how much even their subscription model changes so quick that I can't own anything, and if it was a different company that was leading some of these things, you might have a little more faith in subscription versus ownership. But they're a prime example of why we on this podcast cannot stand the trend towards subscription instead of ownership. So
yeah,
it's frightening.
If Microsoft decides to, and this has been a rumor last year or so, to make Windows a subscription, and you can no longer buy a copy of Windows, you have to pay yearly for Windows.
Yeah.
Like, that's like, okay, I'm gonna do everything I possibly can to switch over to probably Linux, because you and I are PC gamers. Yeah. Apple just hasn't gotten on board with not yet. They're making strides when it comes to gaming, but they're not there. But Linux, could be an option. yeah, I'm not a big fan of Microsoft Windows. I absolutely hate that Office went to subscription, and they make it more difficult to purchase, a copy of like Word or whatever. In fact, if you can buy a copy of Word, it's like an old version of Word. So I absolutely hate that. I do appreciate that when they do update to the next version of Windows. So this is a good and bad. This is literally like a shit sandwich, right? So I appreciate that, you know, when Windows 11 came out, right? Microsoft was like, "Hey, if you just got a computer and it's got Windows 10 on it, you can upgrade for free to Windows 11, and we want you to do that, but you will get 4 years worth of, security feature updates and security patches for Windows 10." So, 4 years is a long time. As I said way earlier, because we're an hour into this, I think I said like 40 minutes ago that I can't even remember where I was going to go with this, but when you purchase a computer, you want it when you purchase a computer, most people replace their computer within 24 months, 24 to I think 30 months usually on average. So that's 2 to 3 years, and so for Microsoft to be like, here's 4 years, worth of the old operating system, that's good. But every time they do that, man, do they hammer your computer to try to trick you into updating, right? So they've gotten in trouble before for installing an update on your computer, and then you're getting pop-ups to upgrade to the next OS. And then I believe it was when Windows 10 came out. I think it was when Windows 10 came out. People would go to bed and then wake. They would have Windows 7 or Windows 8 on their computer. They'd go to bed and they'd wake up and they'd turn on their computer and Windows 10 was on it because it automatically updated without their consent. uh, so that's the shit part of the shit sandwich. Yeah, Microsoft is a company. They're certainly a company.
It's a company. Yeah, I hate to end it on that note.
They-
Is there anything we can do? Gosh. Yeah, awesome. Be excited.
Yeah. Be excited. But hey, you know what? While Microsoft is making sure that you get a new computer every 4 years, if you have an old computer, you can always put Linux on your old computer to keep it running. And hats off. Hey, let's end it on this note. Hats off to Google. After starting and being so pro Apple at the beginning of this episode, I'm going to shout out Google here. So Google and Chrome OS, say what you will about Chrome OS. Does it suck? Yeah, kind of a little bit. But, Chrome OS was designed to run on shit hardware. Chromebooks are shit hardware. But I have a Chromebook and I got it to play around with, and I got it cheap because Chromebooks are cheap. And this little Chromebook actually feels quite snappy for it having just terrible hardware built into it. It's got like a Core i3, 10th gen or something like that. 4 gigs of RAM. But the operating system feels, because it's so light, it feels pretty snappy. And I know through Google you can get, I think it's Chrome OS Flex. You lose some features, but you can install that on your old computer. So if you got like an old Dell Optiplex from 2010 and you're like, Windows is about to lose its security, how do I stay secure and browse the internet?
Interesting.
You could actually put Chrome OS Flex
like you're thinking.
on that old Dell, and not only is it a current OS and you get security, and Chrome OS is actually one of the most secure operating systems currently. But yeah, it keeps your computer up to date.
This is a good idea,
and it will run pretty well, right? So you can, imagine Chrome OS running on a Dell from a few years ago that's got an i7 in it and 7 i3. or an i5 in it. It's going to run way better. In fact, I might try this on some of our Dells that we have here.
Yeah,
our
I was
old
about to say,
ones.
not only is this a
Yeah.
better ending to our podcast than Microsoft, it's
Mhm.
so awesome, better ending. Go Google. We got to try that out, and even a plug here. We have devices that you can buy.
Yeah.
You got the website.
We have, yep. So yeah, it's gktechpros.com. Just send a message if you're interested in. If you're looking for an old an old computer that's cheap, because
Apparently, we'll
you have
put
a use for it.
Chrome OS on it for you, maybe.
Hey, I'll
Just
it
browse.
comes with Windows 10.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you want Chrome OS on it, I'll put Chrome OS on it, no problem. Assuming it takes it, I need to do that experiment. But hey, that's a way to keep that. I'm a big fan of renewing old technology,
Yeah.
right? Let's keep that stuff out of the landfill.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
if you have, if you got it, yeah, this is becoming a plug for us. But
It's a
if
good
you
one,
have it, if it is a good
It's
one,
our sustainability plan.
if you have,
plan.
it's our sustainability plan is to keep old, crappy things out of the landfill. If you can put Linux on it and used it as a server or just as a Linux machine, or Chrome OS as a still secure operating system to browse the internet with. It's a way to keep that stuff out. It's a way to get into a computer. Maybe you need a second computer. Maybe you need a server, or you want to get into that for something that's going to cost you less than $200, and really in some cases less than $100. Then it's a great thing to do. So we can end it on that note. What do you think?
Yeah, awesome. Much better. I'm feeling better than Microsoft.
All right. There you go. Yeah, if you have a need for an old computer that's old, an oldie but a goodie, just go to gktechpros.com and send me a message, and I'll get you a price quote, and we can talk about what you need. And thanks for listening.
Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.